Welcome my dear friends, my name is RV and this is going to be my first YouTube video where I am going to share some interesting things about Mount Kailash. Mount Kailash, which is also known as Kailasa in Sanskrit, which means crystal. This mountain has got different names in different religions. In Jainism, it is known as Mount Ashtapada, while in Buddhism, it is known as Mount Meru. In Chinese, it is called as Kangring Bokyu, and in Tibet, it is known as Gangrin Proch, which means precious snow mountain. While speaking about the elevation of this mountain stands about 6,638 meters above the sea level, while the greatest and the highest peak, that is of Mount Everest, stands approximately 8,850 meters above sea level. The Mount Kailash is comparatively of lesser height, but still it remained unclimbed. While speaking about the geographical locations and the surroundings of this Mount Kailash is located in the remote southwestern corner of Tibet of the Great Himalayas, which is situated in the Tibet Autonomous Region. At the south of this Mount Kailash, there are two important lakes. The one Manasarovar, which is of a round shape, and the Rakshastal, which is of crescent shape. These two important lakes becomes a source for the four major important rivers in the Asia: Indus, Satluj, Brahmaputra and Karnale, which is a tributary of Ganges. There's an interesting thing about this lake Rakshastal. As there is no plants or animals or any kind of wildlife surrounding this lake, the Tibetan people call this lake as Ghost Lake, and they also believe that this lake contains impure water, Gangachu. It is believed to be created by the Rishis as a connection between Lake Mansarovar and Lake Rakshastal to transfer the pure water towards the Rakshastal. Characteristics of this mountain. According to the Puranas, this mountain was believed to be made up of different jewels. Like each phase of this mountain is created or made up of different jewels, and each jewels represent or depict an emotion. Like the northern face, which is made up of gold, it depicts the daunting and forbidding emotion, while the southern face, which is made up of lapis lazuli, which depicts the majesty and the glorious emotion, and the western side, which is made up of ruby, it depicts the compassion and benevolence, while the eastern side, which can be seen through a long way off, it remains most mysterious one. Coming to the history of this mountain or history of the region of this mountain. In early 19th century, the Tibet contained 7,60,000 monks and nuns, which was twice as many as in Europe in early modern period. Tibet was a monastic state in whose history the Buddhist hierarchy and the monasteries played an important role. The Tibet was exposed to the imperialism and colonialism by British, Russian and Chinese invaders. Due to the fear of Russian influence towards the Tibet, the British undertook a bloody campaign to Lhasa in 1903. From then on, the British took control over the southern parts of the countries, and it remained until 1947. The new Indian state took control over this region, but no sooner the Chinese invaders were waiting. In 1950, the China invaded this region and they took control over this region. The leader of the Communist Party, Mao Zedong, tried to secularize this region, and this made the 14th Dalai Lama to flee with many others towards India, and they formed government in exile. So the Chinese took control over the Tibet in 1960 to 1980, and it took a different course. And currently, the Chinese administrative rule is present in the Tibet Autonomous Region. Being actually made up of black rock, Mount Kailash is a wonderful diamond-like shaped mountain which surrounds beautiful landscape which is rugged and dried. Mount Kailash is one of the sacred mountains which became the important pilgrim for the Hindus, Buddhists, Jains and the Tibetan religion of Bon. Let us discuss one by one the religious significance of this Mount Kailash. Firstly, in Hinduism. In Hinduism, it is traditionally believed or traditionally recognized that Mount Kailash is the abode of Lord Shiva, where along with him, his wife, goddess Parvati and their children Kartikeya and Ganesha live there. Did Ravana actually try to uproot this mountain? According to the Uttarakhand section of Epic Ramayana, yes, Ravana actually tried to uproot this mountain. Once after a victory war, Ravana was travelling in his famous Viman Pushpak. But unfortunately, this Pushpak Viman could not fly over this mountain. This was very disharmonious to the Ravana since he could not explore this area. Soon, the bull-faced official Vahana of Lord Shiva appeared and confronted Ravana that this is a restricted area or this is a restricted region, so you could not fly over this region. Since Lord Shiva and Parvati are sitting at the top of this mountain and not to be disturbed by anyone. Ravana was very impatient and furious, so he made mockery out of Nandi. He also made fun of his face, to which the Nandi cursed Ravana that one day he will meet his ill fate and will be hunted down by monkeys and apes and who will destroy him and his kingdom. To which Ravana didn't pay a heed and he went on ahead to uproot the mountain. Ravana with all his might and 20 hands put under the base of Kailash. Goddess Parvati was the first to recognize that the Mount Kailash is trembling and shaking, so she complained with Lord Shiva about the same. Lord Shiva smiled as he was aware about the act of Ravana. Lord Shiva gently pressed the mountain with his right toe to keep the mountain rooted and thus trapping the Ravana beneath the Kailash. Ravana cried in grief to let him go. He also sang hymns in praise of Lord Shiva to save him. In turn, Shiva was very pleased and not only let him go but also granted him a wish of a very powerful weapon, the invincible sword. Not only in the Ramayana but also in the Mahabharata there is a mention of this mountain. According to the Mahabharata, the Pandava brothers along with their wife Draupadi trekked to the summit of this mountain to get liberation, as it was considered to be the gateway to heaven, that is Svargaloka. Vishnu Puran also mentions about this Mount Kailash. It talks about the Lord Shiva sitting in a lotus position and engaged in deep meditation and fully immersed in a state of perpetual bliss. In Jainism, according to the Jain scripts, Mount Ashtapada is the site where the first Tirthankara Rishabhadeva attained moksha, that is liberation. It is also believed that his son Emperor Bharat Chakravarti constructed 3 stupas and 24 shrines in the remembrance of 24 Tirthankaras. Their each idols were studded with precious stones, and he named it as Simhanishada. Nirvahan Kand Bhashya also mentions about this mountain. According to Jain tradition, the last Tirthankara, Vardhamana Mahavira, was brought to the summit of this mountain by Indra after putting his mother, Queen Trishala, into deep slumber. There he was anointed and bathed with precious unctions. In Buddhism, Mount Kailash is also known as Mount Meru in Buddhist texts. It is central to its cosmology and had become a major pilgrimage for Buddhist traditions. Thanga also depicting Mount Kailash. Numerous sites were associated with Padmasambhava, whose tantric practices finally credited with establishing Buddhism as the main religion in 7th and 8th century BCE. Vajrayana Buddhists believe that it is the home of Buddha Chakrasamvara, also known as Damchok, who is the supreme bliss. It is said that Milarepa, a champion of Vajrayana, once came to Tibet and challenged Naro Bonchung, who was a champion of Tibetan religion Bon. They both were engaged in a furious and terrifying battle but could not get a result. And then finally they agreed that the one who reaches the summit of this Mount Kailash rapidly would be the winner. Naro Bonchung sat on his magical drum and soared up, while the Milarepa followers were dumbfounded to see him standing still and meditating. Just as Naro Bonchung was nearly at the top of the mountain, Milarepa moved into action and overtook him by riding on the sunlight, thus winning the contest. There were number of attempts and number of mountaineers who tried to climb this mountain, but still this mountain remained unclimbable. In 1926, Hugh Rutledge, an English civil servant and a mountaineer who was a leader in 2 expeditions to Mount Everest in 1933 and 1936, studied the northern face of this mountain and discovered that it is 6,000 feet high and it is utterly unclimbable. He thought of ascent on the northeast ridge of this mountain, but soon ran out of time. Rutledge had been exploring this region along with Colonel R.C. Wilson, who was on the other side of this mountain. R.C. Wilson, along with his Sherpa named Setan, was exploring the southern region of this mountain. Setan informed that there is a feasible route to the summit of this mountain, but they soon ran into unexpected difficulties. Wilson said that just when I discovered an easy walk to the summit of the mountain, a heavy snow began to fall, making the ascent impossible. In 1936, Herbert Tichy, an Austrian writer, zoologist and a climber, was attempting his climb to the Gurla Mandhata peak. He asked one of the localites whether this Mount Kailash is climbable or not. Then he discovered that only one person free of sin could climb this mountain. For that, he or she would not have to actually shear the walls of this ice. Instead, they turn into bird and they can fly over the summit of this mountain. Reinhold Messner, an Italian climber who was given opportunity by the Chinese government to climb this mountain, but he refused by saying that if we conquer this mountain, we would conquer something in people's soul. In 2001, reports emerged that Chinese government had given permission to a Spanish team to climb this mountain, which caused an international backlash. The Chinese government disputed all the reports and declared that no climbing activities shall be taken place in this holy mountain. As I said earlier, this mountain is important pilgrimage for the 4 major religions around the world. There are number of routes available for Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. Through India, there are 2 major important routes, Lepu Lake route and Nathulla route. No any private companies are allowed to use these routes. Instead, only Government of India, MEA, Minister of External Affairs, organize Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. Through Nepal, there are 3 major important routes. One from Huma district, which consists of 3 flights from Kathmandu to reach to the Darchin. Darchin is the place of starting and ending point of the parikrama. The second route is the Tatopani Gangmu route. The third is the Rasuwa Gairong route. Most of the private companies prefer the route through Lhasa from Tibet. While speaking about the climate change, in the recent years, due to global warming, the Tibetan Plateau region has been affected 3 to 4 times faster when compared to any other region in the world. The glaciers are retreating, the lakes are shrinking, the amount of barren land is increasing. Intergovernmental organization ICI MOD has taken up a project called Kailash Sacred Landscape Conservation and Initiative, through which they are putting efforts to study the ecological, economical and social effects of climate change, and also to find out the sustainable ways to cope up with it. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned for another interesting video. Thank you.